I'm live. Hello. Hello to the world. Hello from the other side. I must have called 1,000 times to tell you how or everything that you own, and I know you own. Anyway, what do I sound like when I say blah, blah, blah? Okay, it's still not a great mic, but surprisingly, or shockingly, or depressingly, it's better than the other mic I used to have. Used to have, not used to have. Okay, I'm gonna stop listening to myself now. Do I already have a viewer? Oh, I have like some people are still subscribed to me. I'm like, I don't even know who. I'm like 24 subscribers or something like that. I'm gonna pop into the Discord. Just let them know I'm live. I'm not even gonna be. I'm not gonna try to go as long as I did the other night. But another Amy interview has appeared. A wild Amy interview has appeared. So I am going to. Oh, wait, I gotta do this. Oh, they left. They left. Well, no, now we all know that that zero number cannot be believed. So I basically have to just always assume that there's at least one person listening to me. Which you know what? That's nice because it's like if it truly was zero, I probably wouldn't even talk. Um, like if I knew for a fact that nobody was listening, it's probably okay, like whatever. Ugh, I can't tell like if I'm sick or not. I feel like I'm like stuffy, but then I don't have any other symptoms, and it's been like that for days. Hold on, I need a little, I need my linky link here. There's my linky link. Another Wild Amy interview appeared. Okay, so whoever's over there can feel free to pop over. I gotta finish my crust, and I have to share the right. Amy Coney Barrett's message for America. Oh boy. Here we go. Watching it on the free fucking press. Barry Weiss. What was the name of the other interview? Like, because this one's already way more positive. Amy Coney Barrett's message for America. What's the name of her book? Amy Coney Barrett book. Listening to the Law. Reflections on the Court and Constitution. I just think this is so weird. This is so weird to me that she even released a book at all. Like, this is just not normal. Supreme Court justices don't do this. They don't go out in public. They don't release books for the public to read, like at a layman's level. Not usually. I mean, unless I'm missing some key chunks of history here. I don't remember a Supreme Court justice releasing a fucking book. Also, she's relatively young, isn't she? Google's gonna think I'm like obsessed with Amy Coney Barrett. Well, I mean, I guess in a negative way. She's 53. 53-year-old baddie. Hottie. So she's a young spring chicken. She's a young spring chicken, which means she's gonna be on the Supreme Court for a long fucking time. Because even if we, get that law passed of like 18-year term limits or whatever, it's not gonna like retroactively apply. She's gonna still be on the court the rest of her life, basically. So I don't think they're gonna let it retroactively apply. Also, I'm glad that Epstein video is right there because I'm gonna watch that one right after. Okay, I just have a little bit more crust left, but I tried to eat before watching tonight. I need to invest in toothpicks. I know you might say floss, but sometimes it's like stuck in your tooth in a particular way that only a toothpick can solve. Okay. All right, here we go. Amy Coney Barrett's message for America. Oh, I just want to know, what was the title of the other interview? I feel like it was way less gushing. Where's my? Oh, excuse me. Where's my history at? Oh, it's just called extended interview. Justice Amy Coney Barrett. Like that's already like it's way more neutral. Is that CBS? That's way more neutral. CBS Sunday Morning, yeah. Like it's just interview with the justice. Instead of like Amy Coney Barrett's message for America. God. Isn't Barry Weiss another one of these like I was a liberal Democrat, but then the wokies just got a little too weird and they bullied me a little bit online or something and now God. Why does this it's like an archetype that exists. It's like the Anna Kasparians of the world. Let me just like dye my hair blonde and make my skin like Michael Jackson fucking white. So I can get in the good graces of MAGA, right? Like I don't even want to say it's intentional on Kasparian's end. Like I feel like well also wait, isn't she wait, she's married, right? Kasparian. Wait, is she married? Wait. She is married. Anna Kasparian husband, Christian Lopez. November 2015, Kasparian married minor league baseball player, model actor Christian Lopez. She does not plan to have children. Based. Antinatalist. Oh, I want to turn my headset down. He's a baseball player. Okay. I'm already suspicious. Wait, he's 40. How old is she? 39? Oh, 39. She's 39. He's 40. Okay. Okay. Anyway, I'm just gonna get this over with. My God.
Wow. This is.
How much of that room is MAGA? How much of that is MAGA?
This is.
I'll bet you like 60% of the audience is just straight up like Trumpies.
A little bit like the Free Press prom. I only wish we were wearing our TGIF socks on stage.
Barry, you're saying that because she knows that I have a pair of TGIF socks that I debated wearing.
She has a very good pedicure, though, and it would have taken away from it.
We're women. We're fellow women sitting on a stage together. We're just like fellow women. So we're just going to like vibe on that.
Well, suffice it to say, the media does not quite know what to do with the woman sitting across from me. Before her
Oh, God.
confirmation to the bench, her ideas were described as, quote, a threat to all of our rights.
I'm already fucking cringing, dude. The media. I'm the free press. The media doesn't know what to do with the woman sitting across. Oh my God, dude. Oh, this is gonna be horrible. This is gonna be horrible. I don't even know if I can watch this. Oh,
Quite know what to do with the woman sitting across from me. Before her confirmation to the bench, her ideas were described as, quote, a threat to all of our rights. That's the New York Times. She was called a handmaid. That's the Washington Post. A far right.
oh my God. Here we go. Oh, no, but she's gonna throw a far right one in there though to make it seem like she's fair.
To the bench, her ideas were described as, quote, a threat to all of our rights. That's the New York Times. She was called a handmaid. That's the Washington Post. A far right ideologue, a pawn of the rich, a theocrat, a zealot. You
Oh,
guys all remember and you get the
no, okay,
picture.
never mind.
Now, here we are 5 years into her time on the bench, and the New York Times is now saying Amy Coney Barrett is confounding the right and the left. CNN writes that the last best hope for the Supreme Court liberals is Amy Coney Barrett.
Right, she's confounding the right and the left. What's the definition of the word confounding? To confound someone? Confound definition. Cause surprise or confusion in someone, especially by acting against their expectations. Mix up with something else so that the individual elements become difficult to distinguish. So yeah, I agree. She is confounding the right and the left. You got it. But you got to realize what that word actually means.
Newsweek is saying that Amy Coney Barrett is liberal justice's best chance. So which is it? That is the point of tonight's conversation. Tonight, we are also honored that we get to hear from Justice Barrett herself, and it will be up to all of you.
All this is going to do is just going to feed into her like not hers, Amy's. It's going to feed into Amy's message, which is we're just the court. We're just the neutral court, you know? What can I say? I guess that just shows you how neutral I am because both sides hate me and I'm going to wear that like a badge of honor.
To decide whether the legacy press from 2020 is right or the legacy press from 2025. Suffice it to say, we are all so happy to be here with you. So thank you so much for joining me. I also wanted to thank, there's a bunch of other incredible constitutional scholars and judges here. We have Judge Hardiman here from the Third Circuit. Judge, where are you? He's here. We have Judge Menashe and Judge Park from the Second Circuit, and please do not judge me when I inevitably mispronounce voir dire somewhere in this conversation. Okay, so let's start with your newly published book, Listening to the Law. You open that book with the description of a photograph. It's a photograph taken of your great-grandmother's home on Green Street in New Orleans. It's a very small home. I think it had 3 bedrooms, and yet she lived there with no husband. She was widowed, and 13 children. And this isn't even to mention the relatives and homeless men that were sleeping under the house. It was a raised house in New Orleans. Tell us about that picture and your great-grandmother and why you keep that picture on your desk.
I will. I do want to say thank you so much for having me, Barry. I'm a huge fan of the Free Press and I'm so excited to do this tonight.
There it is. Did she say that to Sunday morning? She sure fucking didn't. I'm a huge fan of the Free Press. She's doing the same shit that Trump does. But she's just much more subtle about it. She's much more like she's going to sneak up on you because she just seems like such a nice lady. Kill me in GTA.
Yes, I opened the book with the story of this picture. I keep it on my desk at home. And the story behind the picture is that for my father's 70th birthday, my siblings and I rented a party bus. We couldn't think of what to do to celebrate. We decided to do a This Is Your Life tour around New Orleans. And one of the stops was my mother's grandmother's house on Green Street. And at that point in my life, I have 7 children, and our youngest.
Oh my God. 7 fucking children? Woo! Oh, it just gets worse, right? And then I know what someone would say, right? You're just connecting random pieces together, Marshall. Doesn't mean she's some wacky Christian person. Doesn't it though? Doesn't it though? The signs are signs are all there. 7 fucking children. No, wait, who's her mother's grandmother? So wouldn't that be her? Oh my God, it would just be her great grandmother. What? Just say great grandmother. The hell is wrong with you? The hell's wrong with these people?
Son has Down syndrome. I was feeling very overwhelmed
What, her son?
on Green Street. And at that point in my life, I have 7 children, and our youngest son has Down syndrome. I was feeling very overwhelmed.
Feeling overwhelmed. Yeah, I'm sorry. You know what they say? Isn't it true? The more kids you have, like successively, they get a higher chance of like having fucked up shit, like Down syndrome. I might be that might be wrong, but I also feel like I heard some kind of urban legend one time that like the 5th child is like more likely to be gay than the previous ones. I don't know if that's true. I don't even know how that would work.
And when I stood in that house and saw its size and thought about how much she fit into that house and how much she handled and fit into her life, I thought I should stop feeling sorry for myself. So I put a picture that I took on that day in a frame, and I keep it on my desk at home and have for the last 10 years. My father just turned 80. And I look at that picture for inspiration, thinking about a woman who fit a lot into her life. And she has legendary status in our family for many reasons, and that is one.
Well,
Legendary.
you fit a lot into your life. You
Legendary
have
Mima.
7 children of your own. Youngest one has Down syndrome. And you write in the book about when you got the call, this shocking call. The feeling wasn't one of elation. It was one of a pit in your stomach. Take us back to that moment. And ultimately, if you could, talk a little bit about how you came to this decision, which obviously transformed your life and has transformed the life of your family.
This is already just such a fucking slurping interview. Like, it's just so different, even in the first 4 minutes, night and day. Especially since I just watched the CBS one. It's so much just better journalism. Oh, Barry, both of them. Well, no, actually, no. Barry's been yapping more. She's been talking way more than Amy. God, oh, Barry Weiss. It's just like, I don't think you were here, but yeah, I was saying that it's like these Anna Kasparian types. They just they got like either bullied or just triggered by one thing one leftist did to them one time, and now they're like some enlightened centrist, but really just on the right. Oh man, it's it's already so bad. It's only been 4 minutes. Oh,
Yes, what I do is a great privilege, and I'm honored to serve the country. To me, it really is service. Um, I think anybody who has paid attention to confirmation hearings in the last, 25 or 30 years knows they're not a pleasant experience. And so I knew that if Jesse and I said yes to this, there was going to be a lot of difficulty and there was going to be a lot of change. I knew the confirmation process was going to be very difficult. I wasn't exactly
why?
sure what kind of attacks I would face. I had
You weren't
some
sure, really?
ideas, and I knew
Oh,
they would
some
come.
ideas, right?
And that's really hard. I mean, it's hard to be attacked publicly, as you well know, Barry. That was very difficult to
Oh,
face.
oh God, you missed it. Well, I don't know if maybe you've already seen it, but um, oh, she let her know at the beginning. She's like, I love the free press. Yeah, I'm a huge fan. I'm so happy to be here. It's oh my god. Is there a difference between a centrist and someone on the right? Yeah, actually there is. Um, I think that divide has been made more clear because of Trump. You have like post-Trump people, like post-Trump Republicans, like Tim Miller, the Tim Millers of the world. What's that other guy's name? Joe Walsh. They're like they like want to they yearn for the days of the old Republican, the old guard Republicans, like John McCain and George W. So I mean, I would consider them to be centrist because they're center right. But I think that's what I think. There's no such thing as like a true centrist that is nothing. Like that's stupid. Like you're gonna either if you're in the center, if you're a centrist, that's fine. But then you within that you're gonna be center right or center left. You're gonna lean one way or the other. Um, like unless you actually are a person who's like 50% of your positions are conservative and like 50% are like, but it's just like no one's ever no one's ever perfectly 50-50. Um, it just that like just mathematically that couldn't it just wouldn't be true, yeah. But also I think like there's a lot of people who claim to be centrists or whatever, or sometimes even straight up they'll say I'm a liberal. Like Dave Rubin used to do that. I'm a classical liberal. And I'm pretty sure Barry Weiss would say that she's a liberal too. But it's just like she carries so much water for the right. I mean, that's what she's doing right now. That's what this is.
It was also hard to think about leaving the life that we had. You know, I didn't love the idea of living in South Bend, Indiana when we first moved. I loved Notre Dame and I loved teaching there, but it was a small Midwestern town and I don't like the cold. But we had really grown to love it after being there for, at that point, 17 years. And so the thought of moving, giving up being proximate to our friends, giving up being proximate to Notre Dame, which plays a big role in our lives, it was hard. And really just the thought of facing the public criticism and being in the public eye was tough.
And you write in the book that your husband, Jesse, said we can do it, but you have to burn the boats.
Yeah. My recollection of the night we decided to do it, we were in our room in our house in South Bend, pacing back and forth. And Jesse said, I'm open, I'm all in, but there's one condition. If we do it, we have to burn the boats. We can't look back. If you're confirmed, you know, in the middle of the confirmation process, it could get ugly. We can't pull back. If you're confirmed, no second guessing, because then we're just going to be miserable because we knew there would be difficulties to come.
I want to talk about the Kavanaugh hearings and the Bork hearing.
What is burn that? Did they live by water or something? Where's South Bend? Is that like a lake here or something? Oh yeah. Oh. I'll edit this part out. This part out of the pod. Oh my god. I swear I didn't plan this. Is there a lake there or something? It's the Great Lake. Wait, which one is this? Is this Lake Michigan? I don't Yeah, I don't think it's Lake Michigan. Okay. So they had so they had boats that they took on Lake Michigan. Is that what she's talking about? That's the boats? Is there a lake there? I zoom the map out. It's fucking yeah. It's a lake, all right.
And the Clarence Thomas hearings in a minute. Let's talk about yours for a moment. The media called you a lot of names. Inexperienced, they called you a zealot. I mentioned some of the things the press called you. Dianne Feinstein notably said that the dogma lives loudly within you, insinuating that you would put your religious beliefs ahead of the law. And Chuck Schumer said that your confirmation was the most rushed, the most partisan, and the least legitimate nomination to the Supreme Court in our nation's history.
Ooh.
I mean, you
Schumer?
have lived through the confirmation of other justices appointed by Republican presidents. Did any of this surprise you?
You mean the criticism?
When Dianne Feinstein said the dogma lives loudly within you, did that affect you?
So she said that in my Seventh Circuit.
Hold on. Does she still okay? Is Barry Weiss the one that comes up is a conservative, and then like 4 down is Is Barry Weiss liberal or conservative? Nobody knows. That's yeah. Everybody else is confused too. Well, not strictly. Wait, this is the AI overview. Well, not strictly conservative. Barry Weiss can be considered to hold positions on the conservative side of the political spectrum, particularly in her critiques of progressive ideology. Yeah. She's been described as a conservative. Okay, I don't know. Whatever. But she exclusively shits on the Democrats. So what's she doing
hearing.
now?
And honestly, I will say that Senator Feinstein was very warm and nice to us when my family was there for the hearing. It surprised me that she said it, and I knew that echoes of that same criticism would surface in the Supreme Court process. So I knew that I would face it.
She's so careful about not being political. She had to throw in like a compliment to Feinstein because it's jeez. Oh, she's so guarded and careful. Look at her face. Like that's like whoever called her a handmaid was like that's spot on. It's spot fucking on. They're right. 100% right. Oh, it's like scary. Like I'm like I'm having a vision. Like 2029 we like won't be Gilead, but it'll be whatever these weirdos want to create.
And yeah, I mean, I guess I wasn't surprised. Someone who was very experienced in Washington told me when my name appeared on the list that if I was open to it, I had to be prepared. He said, I'm just telling you, I'm looking at you, I'm telling you what's going to happen, and you have to be prepared for attacks on your faith and on your family, on your adopted children, and all of that.
On your faith, it's in there. I feel like I wouldn't be bothered so much by her if she wasn't a fucking Supreme Court justice. Like, that's it's like Jesus. Like you're that's such a you have that's so much power. You're so powerful. Like literally, that's the only like it's the only institution that has any fighting chance of fighting against like Trump, which this one doesn't. But like, it's just she's gonna have so much power for so long. It, it's crazy.
Was right.
Taylor Swift says she's been a public figure so long that it takes a lot to hurt her. Do you agree with that? And are you a Swiftie?
Taylor Swift is really tough. I agree with that.
Are you? And are you a Swiftie?
Yes, I do agree with that. I don't think you could do this job. I think the biggest thing about doing this job is you have to have a willingness to be unpopular.
And answer the question.
And you have to have
You a
thick
Swiftie?
skin. And
Swift?
I think that the criticism that I received during my Seventh Circuit hearing, including the dogma stuff about my faith, toughened me up and prepared me for facing the Supreme Court.
Where do I rank her from worst to best? Let me stare at a list of all of them so that I don't get this wrong. Supreme Court justices. Okay. All right. Oh, perfect. There's 9 of them. Just like three rows. Okay. I mean, yeah, Thomas and Alito are for sure at the bottom of the barrel. Doesn't matter which 9, 8, interchangeable. They're both insane. I would say then. Oh, I don't know. Well, she's not next after them, because probably like. Probably I don't know. Probably Roberts. Roberts sucks, dude, and he's the Chief Justice, and like a lot of the bullshit that happens is largely because of him. So, he might be right after like the schizo MAGA guys for me, just because he's done so much damage. But Kavanaugh is also like, I don't know, he sucks bad too. So yeah, I guess the next 2 positions would maybe be interchangeable between Roberts and Kavanaugh. Then I'd put like probably Barrett, maybe Coney Barrett. So she's pretty high up for me, like in terms of like her decision making and general work on the Supreme Court. But I don't know. That's also why I want to put her lower, because I think she's more dangerous because she seems so sensible and she sells sensibility very well and civility, which is scary. Scary. I don't know. It's scarier in a way. Gorsuch is probably like the most level-headed conservative guy. So he'd probably be just below. Gorsuch would probably be just below all the liberals, basically. And then probably like 3, 2, 1 would be Sotomayor. No, sorry. Sotomayor, Jackson, Kagan. I think probably Kagan's my favorite. Oh, wow, that was a fun exercise. I've never like done that up. I mean, I just did that off the top of my head, so I could change it later. But those are my general thoughts on it anyway.
Process, but yeah, I mean, you have to tune it out and you have to let it roll off your back and you can't let it get in your head.
And you listen to Taylor Swift's music.
And you listen to Taylor Swift music. Yes.
Okay, so your confirmation hearing was
hard-hitting journalism.
Paled in comparison in terms of just the vitriol and the intensity of Brett Kavanaugh's in 2018. And some people regard that as just the politics of personal destruction. And he's not the only justice that has received that kind of treatment. There was Clarence Thomas, there was Robert Bork. Do you think it's fair to say that justices that are nominated by Republican presidents tend to get more scrutiny than Democratic ones? And if so, why?
Let's see. I think that the hearings that you mentioned.
She's trying to get her to answer these partisan-ass questions? You think she's going to do that in an explicit way? God, she was so careful in the CBS interview. You think she's going to answer these questions, dude? This is so stupid. Do you basically think that like the Democrats suck? What?
Tend to be the ones that get talked about when brutal confirmation hearings come up and the politics of personal destruction is discussed. I don't know. I mean, I'm loath to make a comparison because, I haven't walked in those other shoes. I certainly think, Brett Kavanaugh is a friend and a good man. And, I watched what he was going through with, I thought it was extremely painful.
You came onto the bench at a moment in this country of, let's just say, intense political, social, cultural upheaval. It was 2020. We had experienced some of the worst rioting in decades. Some people, including the president, thought the election was rigged. Others were talking about Bill Gates putting microchips into our vaccines. Some people said that.
Oh my God, space out this.
Let's just say intense.
Through with, I thought it was extremely painful.
Okay, focus.
You came onto the bench at a moment in this country of, let's just say, intense political, social, cultural upheaval. It was 2020. We had experienced some of the worst rioting in decades. Some people, including the president, thought the election was rigged. Others were talking about Bill Gates putting microchips into our vaccines. Some people said that COVID was spread by 5G. Other people at the time believed that Hillary Clinton killed Kobe Bryant. It was kind of a weird time. How did that impact you? And did that feeling that I remember as being one of just, it was just like summer of 2020, it was just like the hottest time. That time just felt like a time of profound unraveling. How did that impact you and sort of the moment where you ascended to the court, if at all?
I think it was a mixed bag. I mean, I think there were some things that were hard about it because, as you say, those are not months that I think, or gosh, it's extended longer than months, a time that any of us would want to repeat. I think for purposes of the confirmation process, I will say there were some benefits to it because COVID meant, I don't know if you remember during Brett Kavanaugh's hearings, people were in the hearings and dressed as handmaids and erupting and protesting during the hearings themselves.
Nice.
My hearings were closed because of COVID. And so there was there were fewer opportunities for big public protests or rattling me in the process. What you have to moot when you're getting ready for a confirmation hearing. And I didn't have opportunities. I only had one opportunity for a big moot. Usually you have a bunch, but because of COVID, I didn't. But in one of the small moots, one of the practice things that they did was we were around the table, they were asking questions, and then all of a sudden someone just opened the door randomly and ran in and started screaming. And that was to get you used to the possibility that someone might do that in the hearing.
What was your reaction when it happened in the practice?
What is going on? but I didn't have to face it in the actual hearing because COVID kept the building closed. So, there are some things about it I will say that did make it a bit easier.
But the feeling of that time of just families being even more like, you people think back to the moment, and of course that famous photograph of Scalia and RBG on an elephant. I think they're somewhere in India, right? It's an incredible picture. And
Everybody's
they look
brains
back
got,
to
like,
that time in
fried
American
from
life
COVID.
with incredible
God.
nostalgia, this feeling of, wait, like you can actually love people that you disagree with. You can love people that you judge, that you can look at a case differently. And in fact, you can go to the opera together and have New Year's together and love each other. And that time just feels so very far away. Because you write in the book about the kind of comedy and collegiality that you experience from the moment you join the court. Is the court maybe the one place in American life left where that is still the case, or has it infected the court too?
I don't think that Justice Scalia and Justice Ginsburg's friendship needs to be just a relic of the past. And I do think the court is the place, and that's one of the things I try to showcase in the book, where you can have respectful disagreement and debate about ideas, but still have warm personal relations. And so the thing I describe in the book is when I began, and it was a rough time, as you say, that moment, and all confirmations are controversial these days. Mine was too. But I walked into the court and was sworn in a very awkward ceremony because everybody was socially distanced. And so the Chief Justice was holding the, reading the oath, and I was standing back, and Jesse was holding the Bible, with the appropriate number of feet in between us.
From your husband?
No,
he was in your pod.
He was in my pod. No, from the chief. So it was very awkward, but Justice Sotomayor sent up bags of Halloween candy for Jesse to take back to South Bend for our children. I didn't have assistants. I had no office supplies when I walked in my chambers, and different colleagues around the building found out, and one dispatched his assistants to come staff my office. They sent paper and pens so that I could actually start getting some work done because arguments were a few days away. And really, that is the experience at the court. We have lunch together, we interact, we have warm relations. You see on the page a lot of fiery dissents and a lot of fiery writing. But, debate is the lifeblood of the law. You have to have their parties on either side making arguments on either side, and that happens in cases with justices too. But I do think the court is a place where we can model the way to disagree, that you can have different ideas but remain friends.
In your book, Listening to the Law, you talk about your...
Oh, Jesus.
You talk about your love of the Constitution. And I think a lot of people in this room,
but
I do think the court is a place where we can model the way to disagree, that you can have different ideas but remain friends.
In your book, Listening to the Law, you talk about your... You talk about your love of the Constitution. And I think a lot of people in this room appreciate the Constitution. I don't think they think about loving it in the way that you express it in this book. And you talk about...
Yeah, they appreciate the Constitution in this room? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Really? Which parts? Do they even know what all the articles of the Constitution are? which branches are for which one? Do they know how to amend the Constitution?
About it being the court's birth. I loved this. The court's birth certificate. Tell us about why you love the Constitution. It's a cheesy question, but make me talk about it being the court's birth. I love the Constitution. And I think a lot of people in this room appreciate the Constitution. I don't think they think about loving it in the way that you express it in this book. And you talk about it being the court's birth. I loved this. The court's birth certificate. Tell us about why you love the Constitution. It's a cheesy...
Phrases like that have a lot of power, and you can't misuse them. I don't think we should be calling it the court's birth certificate. I mean, maybe it's cute and all, but it doesn't really speak to the fundamental of what the Constitution is and exactly how it grounds the court. I don't know. I'm a little iffy on that.
Question, but make the case for it.
It's probably cheesy for me to say I love the Constitution. The Constitution, we have the oldest written Constitution in the world. And Abraham Lincoln called it the political religion of our nation. And we don't
Right.
share a common religion. America is a melting pot. We're huge. I mean, I would tell my students when I would teach constitutional law and we would talk about federalism and the fact that so many different states, have different identities. Our landmass and our population distinguishes us from many of the countries that we otherwise consider our peer countries. But the Constitution unites us. We all have that much in common. The ideals expressed in the Constitution. And the Constitution and the framework of government that it's set up is the skeleton and the structure that's held our country together. And the Constitution is not yet 250 years old, but America is 250 years old next year. We're coming up on its birthday. And the Constitution is the common thread. And it has lasted so long because I think, it's been called a miracle at Philadelphia, the Constitutional Convention, and it was a miracle. And America, I think, has been a miracle.
There's been a big debate in American life in the past while, and I feel that it's heated up, especially over the past.
I will say that this is a helpful message for this audience, particularly because most of this audience, like, they didn't even want to clap for that. What did they clap for? They clapped for the we could disagree, but hold hands. That's the point they wanted to clap for. But then they didn't want to clap for like America's base and awesome and epic and we're a miracle and how beautiful and I love the Constitution. I slobber all over the Constitution. Like, they didn't want to clap for that. But I feel like this is a helpful message for this audience because I think they're a little reticent to it.
Few years about what America is, right? Is America an idea? Is America just purely a nation? Where do you fall on that? Is America an idea?
No, I think America is more than an idea. I think America is its people too. I think the Constitution set out the contours of what America is. I mean, you can't have a country that's comprised of just an idea. It has to have.
But is
this is a conservative kind of thing right here? Hold on.
No, I think
what America is,
I think, has been a miracle.
There's been a big debate in American life in the past while, and I feel that it's heated up, especially over the past few years, about what America is, right? Is America an idea? Is America just purely a nation? Where do you fall on that? Is America an idea?
No, I think America is more than an idea.
I think to say that.
America
has to say that.
Is its people too. I think the Constitution set out the contours of what America is. I mean, you can't have a country that's comprised of just an idea.
Right.
It has to have
sense.
But is the thing that makes it distinctive from
just the idea?
From nations based on blood and soil or a common ethnic history or something, all the things that, you think about Japan, or is the thing that makes America different that creed, the constitutional creed?
I think that's one of the things that makes it different, but it's not just the idea itself, but I think it's the American commitment to the idea, to the rule of law. If we had just the idea and we all thought it was a great idea, that would not a country make. But I think it's our long-standing commitment to that idea, which is expressed through the flesh and blood people who pour their lives into making that idea a reality that comprises the country.
So
and they loved that she dodged that. That was insane. Oh, I was like, how's she gonna get here? She can't just give in and say it's just an idea or hand wave it. She got there. It's an idea that certain people fought and toiled for. Oh God. Oh. Conservatives are better at philosophy than liberals are. Oh, it's all they were nerds for it. It's conservatives were. Well, I was a conservative. Then I did the Ayn Rand thing in libertarianism, and then I thought I knew everything about philosophy. But it was good because it made me care about philosophy. It made me give a fuck about philosophy. Just turns out you actually need to. Actually, the libertarians were kind of onto something a little bit. They just used it for evil.
Write in the book about I've actually never been to the Supreme Court, but you write in the book about the frieze sort of above you or higher up in the room, and pictured on it are some of the most important lawgivers in human history. There's Solomon, there's Moses, there's Hammurabi, there's Confucius. And you say that the role of the nine is different from all of those famous lawgivers. And I want you to explain why.
Who's different?
So I talked specifically about King Solomon because everyone knows the story of
Was Solomon's different?
Human history. There's Solomon, there's Moses, there's Hammurabi, there's Confucius. And you say that the role of the nine is different from all of those famous lawgivers. And I want you to explain why.
What the fuck is that?
So I talked specifically about King Solomon because everyone knows the story of Solomon adjudicating the dispute between two women who claimed the same baby. And he brilliantly says, well, we'll divide the baby in half and you can each have half, knowing that the real mother would never want to see her child divided. And he was right. And Solomon's wisdom comes from within. And we all trust Solomon as a judge because of the wisdom that he had from within. And I think when people think about the 9 justices on the court.
I'm sorry, how did that resolve the issue? Solomon divide the baby. The AI overview. Bro. Dude, the AI overview on this is wild. King Solomon didn't actually split a baby in. No way. Wait. I have to get my ice cream. God damn it. King Solomon. Just so you guys know. Just so you guys know. I feel like this ice cream's fucked up. I'm gonna get a different one. King Solomon did not, in fact, split a baby in half. What the fuck, dude? This is what I don't know. These Christian types are they're psycho. How do you just hold a story like that in your mind? And that's the one you want to bring up? Fucking splitting babies in half? What are we doing here? It's crazy. My favorite this because everything she says just sounds so polite and nice and sweet. She just says with a little Rizzy voice. She's like, my favorite example to bring up when I teach constitutional law to children is the story about splitting a baby in half. Oh my God. It's insane. Like, and the way she delivered it in the context of this great parable. I don't know. I at least have to listen to what she said again because I'm like, why was that even so brilliant? What did that solve? Like, did they like who took care of the baby? Who's gonna take care of the baby now? Did they just somehow work it out amongst themselves? Because that's the point he was making. It's just this is a stupid thing to fight over. I really don't, I don't understand. Maybe when I get back to my computer, someone can help me understand. Because my understanding is lacking. What's not lacking is my ability to be away from my computer, still talk, be heard. Because I have a wireless headset now. What? Wireless headset. Wireless headset. Wireless headset. Yeah. This is what it'd be like if you went on a date with me. It's just I can just keep talking. Especially if I know that I have to riff, I can just keep riffing. I can just keep on you stream on. Stream on. Like Dream On. My favorite song to sing in karaoke. Well, I guess it's a good one to sing. My voice has to be like in tip-top shape though, because that's a hard one to sing. Need a lot of breath, a lot of extra cajones, as they say. Okay, I was looking, I was looking up Solomon, and then my ice cream was all fucked up. Okay, splitting the baby. Oh, is that actually like a? That's where that comes from? Oh yeah, no, I stepped away to get ice cream. Yeah, no, I wasn't. Yeah, you should have still been able to hear me though when I was away. Um, and I had a disaster that my ice cream, there was a little bit left in it, so it didn't matter. But like what was left was like there was some weird shit on it. I don't know. So I just I threw it away. It's basically cookies and cream flavor, but it's the Breyers double cookie crumble. Just like some people are like, well, yeah, why don't you get the Oreo one? But it's like, I mean, I like Oreo, but like the Breyer, there's something about the Breyers double cookie crumble, like that flavor specifically of cookies and cream. It's just like, you know, um, yeah. Oh, here I put that a little bit more away. I think last time I could still be heard. There's room for my fat face to get the ice cream in. Ah, cookie dough, yeah, cookie dough is really good. Cookie dough is really, really good. That's probably like I get cookie dough if they're out of cookies and cream. Like honestly. So yeah, it's like a very good close second for me. Um the best Ben and Jerry's is half baked, which I know is everybody likes that one, but that's just because it is objectively, legitimately a good flavor. Like the idea of putting like fat brownie pieces in fat cookie dough, and then it's also chocolate vanilla swirl ice cream, like that. That was just a good like like Kino flavor idea. Whoever invented half baked, hopefully they got like a promotion and a raise. And I don't know. I was gonna make a joke and then I lost it. Oh, Solomon. Oh my God. Okay. Split. So splitting the baby is a term in legalese, and it comes from Solomon. Wait, what? What does splitting the baby mean in a legal sense? Wait, in 2012, an opinion by Chief Justice Roberts upheld the legality of the Affordable Care Act, while including points favorable to opponents of the act. Time magazine likened Roberts to Solomon. Oh, Time magazine likened Roberts to Solomon. Not since King Solomon offered to split the baby as a judge engineered a slicker solution to a bitterly divisive dispute. Okay, so I guess this is some kind of like, okay, two women lived together, each had an infant son. One of the babies died. Well, one of the babies died, and the woman whose baby died secretly swapped it with the living child. Both women brought the living child before King Solomon, each claiming it was their own. Solomon proposed that his guards take the living child and cut it in two, giving half to each woman. The false mother agreed to the division, showing that she did not care about the child's life. True mother was horrified, begging Solomon to spare the child's life and give it to the other woman. True mother was horrified. Oh, recognize the true mother's selfless love. Solomon ordered the living child to premier identity. Phrases split the babies often used to describe finding a compromise or solution in complex situations. Okay, I'm about I'm about to make a bold claim here, but bro, this is the most retarded story I've ever heard in my life. Really? This is from the fucking Bible? Are you kidding me? What? What? Why wouldn't they both just act the same way? What? Wouldn't they both say, "Oh my God, that's horrible. No, don't kill the baby." Like, I, but like that doesn't. It's not like that wasn't so. I mean, he was wise enough to know know their character enough. So, to, how is this? What? It's just like he had a good read on his subjects. I. Ha, I'm sorry. I just. This is like when. This is like when I heard about David Hume's "You can't get an odd from an is," and I was like, "Isn't that the only place you could get it from?" I, I don't know. Okay, whatever. I'm smarter than David Hume, and I'm smarter than Solomon in the Bible. It's just because people don't like think back all the way. They don't take the fundamentals of it, something all the way back. Like, ah, split the baby. So that's where split the baby comes from. That is nuts. I never knew that. What the fuck? Split the baby. Split the baby. Split the baby on that one.
When people think about judges generally, federal judges, like my friends who are here tonight, I think that people imagine that judges function like Solomon because those are the stories with which we are familiar. You know, Confucius, Hammurabi, Solomon, King Louis XIV. I just think that those are the people who we imagine. But federal judges are different. We can't decide what's right just by our own lights. We have to apply the law. And so it looks different. And so I think a lot of times people criticize decisions that the court has made from the wrong reference point because they're asking, was this the just thing in that Solomon sense? Was this the fairest result? But sometimes I think the result that the law.
Why is the Solomon story like I don't know what the right your fictional meta you're using to like support the idea of justice? He didn't get the just outcome because he used some logical principle that would work every time. He just happened to guess which one would behave in such a way that would give her away. Like there's I don't get maybe it's me. It could just be me.
Law demands isn't necessarily fair. Sometimes the result that the law demands should be changed, but it's just not the judge's job to change it because the Constitution curbs federal court authority and it gives them a very defined role to play that is far less freewheeling, say, than that of King Solomon.
Will you talk about a specific example of, you talk about in
This audience class is weird
2022,
shit.
this case comes before you where the Supreme Court is considering a death penalty appeal by one of the Boston Marathon bombers. And you talk about the conflict between your own personal conviction and your decision in the case.
Yes. So, and another thing that came up in my confirmation hearings, when I was a law student, I wrote a law review article about the death penalty. I'm Catholic, which I don't think is a huge secret. In that article that I wrote, I expressed with my co-author, the view that the death penalty is immoral. And that is the view.
Surprise take from me, but based. I do agree with this. I do think the death penalty is immoral. Not for the same reason she does, though. Not for the same reason she does. Mine's actually totally like a pragmatic argument. It's a pragmatic argument that gets you to why it's immoral, because because we don't have perfect knowledge. That's why I don't. That's why I think the death penalty is immoral. And unless we could know with 100% certainty that we're always putting guilty people to death, if you just like wrongfully killing even one innocent person is just like a irreversible tragedy that human beings should not do to each other. In my opinion, in my view. Um, so yeah, anyway.
Of the Catholic Church, and we describe that view in this article. But that's my view, and it's not my role to impose my view on other people. And the law, federal law, authorizes the death penalty. And in the Boston Marathon bomber case that you're talking about, the death penalty had been imposed, and we had a case come before us seeking review of some aspects of the trial.
I mean, I guess like, see, that's where I get. It's always like I always just get pulled by facts when I think of hard examples like this guy, the Boston Marathon bomber, or like actual fucking terrorists that I mean, it's like videos of every angle of them doing it, and we know for sure they did it. Like, I mean, maybe there are some people that you could put to death, but see, it would be under like very extreme circumstances. I don't think, yeah. So I think most of the time we probably shouldn't. The state probably shouldn't just be like killing people for committing crimes.
And what I talk about in the book is, it's not my role as a judge to say, do I think the death penalty should have been meted out here? Do I think that the death penalty is just? My role is simply to say, was the law followed? And if I feel like I can't apply the law because of my moral view about what the law requires, then I should recuse. But I shouldn't cheat or try to bend the law. And in fact, I've sworn to uphold the law. And I did not recuse, and I don't feel like simply saying what I said in that case was that I think the law was followed in the imposition of that death sentence. I didn't feel like that triggered a need to recuse. I felt like I could do that fairly. But that illustrates that sometimes what the law requires is a
What did she say? Why do you recuse?
Because of the death penalty is just. My role is simply to say, was the law followed? And if I feel like I can't apply the law because of my moral view about what the law requires, then I should recuse. But I shouldn't cheat or try to bend the law. And in fact,
so she's saying if her personal moral view gets in the way of interpreting the law, then she should recuse herself. Okay, so that's her standard.
In fact, I've sworn to uphold the law. And I did not recuse, and I don't feel like simply saying what I said in that case, which was that I think the law was followed in the imposition of that death sentence. I didn't feel like that triggered a need to recuse. I felt like I could do that fairly. But that illustrates that sometimes what the law requires is a conflict with the judge's personal beliefs. But in that circumstance, if the judge is to sit on the case, it has to be the law that carries out and the law that the judge applies.
But help people who are not in your world. Why not recuse in that situation?
I think that's a very personal decision for every judge. I mean, I think for me, and the way I think about it is, it gets down in the weeds. In the Catholic Church, there's a doctrine called cooperation with evil. And it really has to do with how closely involved you are with carrying out the wrong. And so in my view of my moral obligations and my judicial obligations are with carrying out the wrong. And so in my view of my moral obligations and my judicial obligations.
She hesitated a lot before she got into her more religious views. I don't know. Was that her thinking like, let me not, can I go a little more mask off for this audience? Like, I think she was feeling it out. Oh, this is so weird.
In my view, reviewing that sentence for its consistency with the law or not isn't so close that I felt like it triggered a moral obligation on my part to have to recuse.
Let's talk about some of the biggest cases that you've heard while you've been on the bench. You've heard hundreds of cases. You've written many majority opinions. I think the one that is in the minds of many, many people who are not close Supreme Court watchers is, of course, Dobbs, the case that overturned Roe v. Wade. And you defended the decision by saying that Roe just simply had no basis to declare abortion a constitutional right. And the broad, I would say, conservative legal position is that the right to abortion was basically created out of thin air in 1973. And some liberal scholars agree, even some liberal scholars who are pro-choice. I know Akil Amar, I think he might be here. He's been on my podcast explaining that. But what Roe did have is 49 years of precedent. So how does the court determine when long-standing legal precedent should be overturned? And in as colloquial a way as possible, explain that decision.
Good question.
And then we can get deeper into Catholic doctrine later in the hour.
It's a good question, though.
All the easy questions, Barry. So there is a doctrine called stare decisis, and you probably heard that doctrine discussed in the context of Dobbs and some other cases. It comes up pretty frequently. And that doctrine stands for the principle that cases, generally the court lets cases stand. It means let the thing decided stand, let it stand. So the court follows precedent, but no justice ever in history that I'm aware of has thought that precedent should never be overturned. And this doctrine that's called stare decisis accounts for that. And there are a series of factors that the court applies in deciding whether or not a precedent that is erroneous should be overruled. The starting point is that it has to be an error. Obviously, this only matters if, in fact, the decision is wrong. Being wrong isn't enough. You have to consider a series of other factors like, has this caused problems? Has it been disruptive to the law? How much reliance is there on this decision? Will it disrupt reliance interests? Has this decision been undercut by subsequent developments? Those are the kinds of considerations the court takes into account. And so in Dobbs, the court spent...
Don't most of those apply to abortion? What did she say? There's been repercussions?
In fact, the decision is wrong. Being wrong isn't enough. You have to consider a series of other factors like, has this caused problems? Has it been disruptive to the law? How much reliance is there on this decision? Will it disrupt reliance interests?
Yeah, lots of reliance.
Has this decision been undercut by subsequent developments? Those are the kinds of considerations the court takes into account.
I mean, two of those.
And so in Dobbs, the court spent a long time, devoted a lot of the opinion to marching through those stare decisis factors and explaining why the legal landscape, the developments in the law post-Roe and up to Dobbs, cut in favor of saying that this was an error that ought to be corrected.
Okay, the complication, I guess, is that not legal complication, but
no reaction from the audience, like awkward shifting in their seats and sniffling, and she explained nothing. That was such a non-response. She said nothing. She didn't explain why they abandoned stare decisis. Only for that decision, though. Hold on, didn't the Supreme Court do something really unhinged, very recently? I've been hearing a little bit about it. Supreme Court racial profiling? It has to do with ICE? What? Can I read this? Oh yes, my student account. Hell yeah. What? Oh. Supreme Court decision on ICE and racial profiling explained. This is New York Times. Ruling allowed immigration agents to stop people for reasons that lower courts had deemed likely unconstitutional. Keys federal agents engaging in blatant racial profiling, carrying out indiscriminate immigration operations based on suspicion. Supreme Court on Monday overturned a federal judge's order that had prohibited federal agents in Los Angeles from stopping people and questioning them about their immigration status based solely on factors like their ethnicity. The ruling is not the final word in the case, which stems from the Trump administration's attempt to carry out mass deportations, but the court's Republican-appointed majority will allow the government to continue using aggressive and unconstitutional, in the eyes of its critics, tactics and immigration sweeps as the litigation slowly plays out. Here's a closer look. What does the ruling mean? For now, federal agents in Los Angeles carrying out the immigration crackdown continue to decide which people to stop and at least briefly detain for questioning based solely on one or combination of four factors. A lower court judge deemed unconstitutional. Those factors are people's apparent race or ethnicity, the fact that they speak English with an accent or speak Spanish, the presence of particular locations like farms or pickup sites for day laborers, and the type of work they do. For the Trump administration, that means federal agents can make stops to carry out the immigration crackdown without the potential chilling effect of fearing they could be accused of violating court order and held in contempt. For American citizens of Hispanic descent in Los Angeles, especially people who speak with an accent or work as manual laborers, that means they will continue to risk being stopped to question whenever they go out. That means it is necessary precaution to always carry documents with them in a way that other Americans need not. What is the case about? Under the Fourth Amendment, government agents may not stop and detain people at reasonable suspicion that there's legal ways to do so. That's true. Large scale efforts of random undocumented migrants living in Los Angeles areas raise the question of whether Trump administration violated restriction. Since June, the Trump administration used roving patrols of armed mass federal agents to carry out sweeps. The agents have detained people for questioning about their legal status, targeting daily laborers, Home Depot, parking lots, Home Depot, extract sites. Several U.S. citizens have been stopped, questioned by lawsuits, seek class action status. They accuse federal agents of getting blatant fraud. People established federal agents stop from using in the interim, should they be permitted to continue using them and until there is any final judgment? What did the lower courts say? In July, a federal district court judge in Los Angeles, held that it was strongly likely that the federal agents were violating the Fourth Amendment by stopping people without reasonable suspicion. She issued a temporary restraining order tying the hands of federal agents while the litigation continued. The order specifically barred the federal government from stopping and detaining people in Los Angeles area based solely on one or more combination of four factors. We already read this. Okay. In August, a three-judge panel of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the United Circuit declined to block her order. Trump administration the Solicitor General Your Honor. Oh no, he's more of the smoker. He like he can barely talk. Yeah. He needs water. So an emergency intervention from the Supreme Court, he argued that hanging the prospect of contempt over every investigative stop of suspected illegal aliens would upend the government's ability to enforce immigration law in Los Angeles. Look at Kavanaugh. He concurred with the decision, little dweeb, weirdo dweeb, saying that agents must be allowed to rely on their experience in dealing with the problem that millions of foreign people are unlawfully living in the United States. What it wants for now, the majority as a whole did not issue a ruling explaining its decision. They did not issue a ruling explaining their decision. Oh, because it's for an emergency shit. But one of its 6 members, Kavanaugh, filed a 10-page concurring decision. He concluded that the plaintiffs probably lacked standing, but also addressed the substance of their concerns, saying the tactics are not likely to violate the Fourth Amendment. Weighing what was reasonable, Justice Kavanaugh said that agents must be allowed to rely on their experience in dealing with the problem that millions of foreign people are unlawfully living in the United States. He portrayed the harm to people who are stopped and questioned despite being lawfully in the United States, including citizens, as modest. As for stops of those individuals who are legally in the country, the questioning in those circumstances is typically brief, and those individuals may promptly go free after making clear to the immigration officers that they are U.S. citizens or otherwise legally in the United States, he wrote. Could have had a V8. Could have had Kamala Harris. No, wait. Hold on. We're talking about Kavanaugh right now? So actually, could have let fucking Obama get his Supreme Court pick. But no. Fucking McConnell. What did the dissent say? Oh, Sotomayor. Oh, she's gonna make me pushed up in my list maybe. In an opinion joined by Justices Elena Kagan and Ketanji Brown Jackson, said the ruling forced an entire class of American citizens, those who look, talk, or work in ways associated with undocumented immigrants, to the indignity of having to carry documentation to prove that they deserve to walk freely. Right, exactly. The Fourth Amendment protects every individual's constitutional right to be free from arbitrary interference by law officers. She wrote, quoting a 1975 case that said it was unconstitutional for the Border Patrol to stop a car and question its occupants when the only ground for suspicion was that they appeared to be of Mexican ancestry. After today, that may no longer be true for those who happen to look a certain way, speak a certain way, and appear to work a certain type of legitimate job that pays very little. This is Sotomayor. Because this is unconscionably irreconcilable with our nation's constitutional guarantees, I dissent. Okay, that's based. Yeah, Sotomayor is really, yeah, that's a good argument. That's it. Oh, is there a partisan pattern in the rulings? There is. All the jurists who concluded that upholding the Constitution probably requires ordering federal agents to be more selective and individualized in deciding whom to stop. Judge Frimpong, the three appeals court judges, and the Supreme Court justices of dissent are Democratic appointees. Justice Kavanaugh and the remaining five justices who concluded the Constitution most likely permits federal immigration agents to use blunter tactics in selecting targets for investigative stops were appointed by Republican presidents. Not surprising at all. Okay. Jesus. What a tangent.
Civic complication.
Right.
Social complication is that a majority of Americans believe that some kind of abortion should be legal. And the constitutional scholar, Alexander Bickel, basically says that the court should never be the slave to public opinion, but if it ignores it too often, it risks losing legitimacy. How should justices and judges weigh the Constitution and what the law requires it should be legal? And the constitutional scholar, Alexander Bickel, basically,
Right.
social complication is that
Ought to be corrected.
okay, the complication, I guess, is that not legal complication, but civic complication.
Right.
Social complication is that a majority of Americans believe that some kind of abortion should be legal. And the constitutional scholar, Alexander Bickel, basically says that the court should never be the slave to public opinion, but if it ignores it too often, it risks losing legitimacy. How should justices and judges weigh the Constitution and what the law requires against public opinion?
So I think I'll say one thing really quickly about the public opinion and abortion. I think that's exactly where the decision should lie. And I think that post-Dobbs, I mean, essentially what Dobbs did not hold that abortion is illegal. Dobbs said that the decision belongs to the people. A lot of constitutional law is who decides. And through that, to the political process where the people can express their views, and there are all kinds of decisions to be made that are better left to the democratic process, like how you draw lines, at what point in a pregnancy can abortion then be off the table, all of these kinds of questions. Parental consent, lots and lots of policy decisions to be made that Dobbs threw to the political process. So I think the fact that people have opinions isn't determinative because it's a question of how they should express them. Now, the bigger question that you're asking too is just how should the court take that into account?
What am I? Hold on. Am I in a fever dream right now?
Lots and lots of policy decisions to be made that Dobbs threw to the political process. So I think the fact that people have opinions.
She avoided, she never said the states. God, she's so careful because she knows there's certain trigger words that'll get people to be like, oh, well, you're some kind of states' rights weirdo. She was very careful to say the people. The people, yeah. The whole of the people? No. You just made the possibility of 50 little tyrannies. But, but, hey, federal government, no comment.
Isn't determinative because it's a question of how they should express them. Now, the bigger question that you're asking too is just how should the court take that into account? I mean, I think you kind of have to steel yourself to political or to popular opinion when you're making decisions. I mean, I think Bickel is right. The court shouldn't do things that are wildly disruptive, right? Mm-hmm. But the court, Brown versus the Board of Education was wildly disruptive. I think that the court has to be prudent. I think prudence plays a part in deciding, when to overrule precedent, prudence. And I think you can see that. Bickel has a lot of articles and books where he points out times that the court has exercised that prudence in ways in which it has.
It's so disastrous because she's just not wrong here. She's just not wrong. Yes, prudence is good. You want, especially in the law, you want it to be methodical. You want to have all the evidence very brightly lit in the light of day, so everybody can see it and know that we're all looking at the same thing. and you figure it out and you deliberate it. You make sure, you make certain. Um, yes, you want prudence. You want it to kind of, in order for it to be good justice, it kind of has to move slow. Um, Unfortunately, fortunately, and unfortunately.
But I do think that it's pretty risky to take popular opinion into account when you're deciding cases.
One of the things that was so shocking about the Dobbs decision was the leak ahead
She
of
just
the
said it's
decision.
risky. Don't do it.
And
Jesus.
I mean, there was an investigation into it. The leaker was never found. But the reason it was so shocking, of
Face
course, is
leaker.
that this is the Supreme Court. This is supposed to be the most high trust, high integrity place. I know you can't speak to the internal discussions that you've had, but if you can characterize a little bit of how the leak impacted the workings of the court, if at all, I think people would be really interested to hear that.
Yeah, the leak was a huge breach, breach of trust, and it was shocking. The court is pretty small. I mean, it's the smallest branch of government, and not just because there are only 9 justices. Just the number of employees are within the court, is so much smaller than in the executive branch or Congress. I mean, it's a very tight ship, small operation, and we call ourselves
It's a big ass building, though.
inside the court family. And that's
Court
encompasses all the
family.
employees. And the court operates
I don't want you to be
in
family.
an atmosphere of
Just be
trust.
competent and
so,
good.
of course, the leak did breach that trust. I think in terms of how, I would say that I personally have worked hard not to let it change or make me paranoid, change the way that I relate, because I think one of the beautiful things about the way that the court operates is the trust that we have. But it's you're looking over your shoulder. We were not able to identify the person who leaked the draft, but we have taken measures to change safety procedures to try to improve security. And we haven't had something like that happen again.
Okay, let's talk about some of the other big cases. One of them is Scrimeti. And in this case, the court upheld a lower court ruling which banned some medical treatments for minors that identify as transgender. And in that case, you wrote a concurrence.
What now?
Okay, let's talk about some of the other big cases. One of them is Scrimeti. And in this case, the court upheld a lower court ruling which banned some medical treatments for minors that identify as transgender. And in that case, you wrote a concurrence saying that the court actually didn't go far enough, arguing, and this is your argument, that trans people aren't a so-called suspect class, essentially a disadvantaged minority covered by the 14th Amendment. Can you explain your reasoning here in a way that civilians can understand?
Yes. So suspect class in the law is more than disadvantaged. It's a very unique category, and it triggers what's called
protected
heightened
class?
review. It's a protected class. It means that it's much harder for the legislature to regulate or draw lines that affect this protected class, because courts will then engage in what's called strict scrutiny, which makes it difficult, or heightened scrutiny, typically strict scrutiny, sorry for the jargon, which will often lead to the statute being held unconstitutional. So it makes it very difficult to regulate. And the class.
Nobody has any idea what she's saying here, but it is this is where she's evil. This is the evil. Because she's telling you very clearly that she does not think trans people are, she says they're not a suspect class. They're not they shouldn't be a protected class. That's what she's saying. I don't want to protect them. You can't regulate them. She's saying it. You just gotta know a little bit. And then you can see the evil. This is it. This is the evil. Because she's saying, like, she's basically saying, I hate transgender people. And I want to find a way to actually, like, not just legally erase them, but super legally erase them. Like, this is so evil. That's some evil shit.
Classic suspect class, this flows from the 14th Amendment's Equal
But
Protection
I'm
Clause,
explaining it like in
is
a high school
race.
teacher voice.
Race, when the legislature draws lines based on race, it triggers strict scrutiny, and that's a high bar.
I
Sex
know, God,
classifications
it's such
also
a high
trigger
bar.
heightened
It's
scrutiny.
annoying.
So far, it's a pretty narrow group. It's just those, because legislatures have to draw lines all the time. They have to categorize. And so the court has not added other classes. I mean, it's turned down worthy candidates of groups that seem that are disadvantaged in many ways, like the mentally disabled and like the poor. And the reason to stay your hand as a judge, or the
Trans people are in the same bucket as mentally disabled, poor. God, it's just Jesus.
the court has stayed its hand is that creating new suspect classes does make it
Handicap.
difficult for the political process to solve problems and draw lines.
What's the really bad slur for handicapped people? Cripple. Fucking cripple. crippled poor trans loser.
In sensitive areas. And I think there are, as we can all see, and as the court addressed in Scrimetti, many complicated policy questions that surround the transgender debate. And one of the issues in the case, which the majority didn't reach, we didn't need to reach Scrimetti, many complicated policy questions that surround the transgender debate. And one of the issues in the case, which the majority didn't reach, we didn't need to reach it to resolve the case, is this question of whether any legislation that regulates the trans community, whether it's medical treatments for children, or, you can just think of the headlines and think of the number of things, triggers heightened scrutiny so that it makes it more difficult for it to survive judicial review. And I argued that it should not, that courts shouldn't give it the kind of heightened review that would put it on a path to unconstitutionality.
Okay, I think the way a lot of non-lawyers understood that case is the question of when the state should be able to sort of supersede the will of parents. Some people compared this, and you might reject this comparison, to the idea of vaccine exemptions, that parents can exempt their children from getting vaccinated on religious grounds, and they say, shouldn't it be up to parents to decide this? In your view, is that relevant or not really relevant to the actual case?
So the case didn't present that question.
Right.
So below, the case presented two questions. One was whether it interfered with a parent's right to direct medical treatment for their children. The court did not address that question in Scrimetti. The question that the court addressed is whether it discriminated on the basis of sex to permit transgender or to permit children to obtain hormones for purposes of other medical conditions, but not for purposes of transitioning. So it wasn't the parental claim. The parental claim was addressed by the court below, but we didn't address that claim.
Another huge case recently is Trump versus the United States, of course, in which the court was asked to rule on the following question. Can presidents, I'm sure there's legal jargon, but the way I understand it, can presidents be tried criminally after they leave office for acts related to their official duties?
What's she gonna say?
Not shooting someone on Fifth Avenue, but...
Oh, God, the audience is gonna laugh at that. I don't think CBS asked about the immunity ruling. I mean, I'll give her credit for asking about, like, good cases, I guess, to get her... Oh, God, what's she gonna say to this, though?
Their official duties. And you said that presidents have this level of immunity. In other words, they can't shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and be immune from the consequences of that legally, but they can't be prosecuted for their official acts. What gives the president those special privileges?
So the way that I regarded it is that it's not that the president has special privileges. As I see it, it was a question of separation of powers. It's what questions Congress, or what conduct by the president that Congress
She wanted to separate her powers into Donald Trump.
Can Congress criminalize? So for example, I'll just use an easy example. The Constitution gives the president the pardon power. If there were a federal statute that somehow made it criminal or illegal for the president to exercise the pardon power, then the president could not be prosecuted for that because it would violate the separation of powers. So official acts, when you think about acts that are committed to the president, the pardon power. If there were a federal statute that somehow made it criminal or illegal for the president to exercise the pardon power, then the president could not be prosecuted for that because it would violate the separation of powers. So official acts, when you think about acts that are committed to the president by virtue of his office, sometimes is what the opinion held. I saw it slightly differently from the majority, but there are some times in which it would inhibit the president's exercise of the powers that the Constitution lawfully gives him.
Is that one of the few times she wrote on her own, like a in the corner, like a loser, like she kept mocking everybody else for? Wait, tell me, Amy Coney Barrett. Where did she have? Is this it? Amy Coney Barrett. Roberts delivered the opinion of the court in which Thomas, Alito, Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, JJ joined in full, and in which Barrett joined except as to Part 3C. Part 3C. Oh, fuck. 3C, fuck me. Wait, where? Wait. Let me just search I. What? What? Wait, 3C. Yeah. 3. Oh, Ari, wait. Is this what she wrote? Any of the court. 3C? Where's her? C. It's 3. Wait, where's C? Oh, there it is. Wait, so is this what she wrote? I have no idea. I don't know how to read these fucking things yet.
For him to be subject to criminal liability for exercising those powers. But that is a narrow, that is a narrow category in my view, and it does not encompass shooting someone on Fifth Avenue or unofficial acts.
The president would be held to account
for such a thing. The president would be held to account for such a thing. I want to make sure
about that.
Yes.
Okay, so
yes.
There are two kinds of dockets at the court. One is traditional. That's the one we all hear about. This is called the merits docket. This is for people like me who learned a lot ahead of this interview. And then there are cases that are decided outside of the normal sort of fully briefed deliberative process. And this is called the emergency docket. A lot of people call it the shadow docket, in which there generally is an oral argument. Am I characterizing this fairly so far? Okay. The recent case concerning birthright citizenship, Trump v. Casso, which was brought, of course, after Trump issued this executive order saying that babies born on American soil to illegal immigrants were not citizens. And this was a case that was obviously a huge explosion, and it was adjudicated at the shadow docket. And given its importance and sort of the amount of precedent in a case like this.
I was going to say, we didn't decide on the merits. We didn't decide on the merits.
Why was it heard there rather than in the merits docket?
So we don't get to pick the track that a case is on when it arrives to us. So the cases that arrive on the emergency docket are cases that are in an early posture, an interim posture. So they have not been fully decided by the court below. So our normal docket, the way that we have taken cases, for a long time, and the way that it works better, the routine way, is for a case to be fully adjudicated in the courts below, and then we review it on appeal to decide whether the judgment below should stand or not. The emergency docket has not run its course. These are cases that have not run their course in the lower courts. Lower courts have reached an early tentative decision, often a preliminary injunction. And when cases come to the emergency docket, it's essentially the litigant who comes seeking relief to us saying, look, the lower court has done this, let's say, enjoined the birthright citizenship policy. And we can't wait. We need relief now, because if you wait to take this case until it runs its course in the lower courts, what happens in the interim, the suspension of whatever statute or executive order is in place, that it causes me irreparable harm. And so you need to act right away. Now, in that case, we did not have the birthright citizenship question before us. The only issue that the government sought
Called it. We did not have the question before us.
emergency relief on was the question of whether district courts could enter these things that are called universal injunctions.
Yep.
Okay, and I want to talk to you about injunctions, because this is
Yes.
something we've written a lot about and that all of us have sort of learned a lot about. It was not an issue several years ago in the way that it is now, and I want to characterize it and make sure I'm characterizing it correctly. Basically, in the
I want to make sure that everybody knows that Democrats did it too, and that they kind of did it a little worse and more cringe.
early months of this administration, every day we had a situation in which some judge in some state was blocking something that the Trump administration was trying to do. I'm exaggerating only slightly. In this case, as you mentioned, the Supreme Court didn't decide whether or not the birthright EO was unconstitutional. I'm not a judge. I have no idea how that could not be unconstitutional, but whatever. But what the court did do is basically limit these nationwide injunctions.
Right.
Okay. And so my question is really about the injunctions, because it seems to me that they're kind of a Rorschach test. People looked at what was happening in the first months of the Trump administration and either felt broadly one of two things. We have a lawless president, and these judges are protecting us from his lawlessness, or we have rogue activist judges trying to make an end run around a president that was democratically elected. No pressure, but mix, which is it? Make sense of it for us, steel man each side, and help us make sense of sort of what was going on there. Which is it?
Okay, our district judges work so hard to get it right, and they are facing the same emergency docket. This
Her question kind of collapsed there, but I'm interested to see how she navigates this.
fast and furious flow of these cases that are coming in to them too. So I think all federal judges are working hard here. I think the thing with universal injunctions, it's not new to this administration. I mean, this has been something that has been escalating over time. There were universal injunctions entered during the Biden presidency as well, against various of the Biden administration's executive orders. And these universal injunctions shut down essentially the executive order, or it can happen with respect to a statute, as to everyone. Sometimes they're called nationwide injunctions, because an easy way to think about it for a non-lawyer is just to say, you can't enforce this policy anywhere in the country. And normally the way litigation works is that I sue and I say, you can't apply this policy to me. But a universal injunction is efficient. I mean, that's one of the arguments for it. It's efficient because if the judge thinks it's unconstitutional, you can say, well, look, you can't enforce it against anyone else. The question is whether the judge has authority to do that or not, which was the CASA question.
You once described yourself as a one jalapeno gal, as opposed to the judge you clerked for, Justice Scalia, who you described as a 5 jalapeno guy. Not a reference, obviously, to how you take your Indian or Mexican food, but a reference to.
What? What? Is it just Barry Weiss just wants to keep close to this power? She's just the glazing. Why? The glazing. Oh. Please make it stop.
To the way that he wrote and the spiciness of it. And you might describe yourself that way, but here is what you wrote in Trump versus Casa, in which you were taking on Justice Jackson's dissent head on,
Oh,
writing
yeah, she
this.
was asked about this
Justice
already, yeah.
Jackson decries an imperial executive while embracing an imperial judiciary. You said that she was pushing a vision of the judicial role that would make even the most ardent defender of judicial supremacy blush. And I think given your general restraint and stoicism and sobriety on the page, people were like thinking you were a little Scalia-esque in that. Do you regret the way that you phrased it?
No.
Should you have gone further?
No. I'm gonna cry. I'm in tears. I'm crying. I'm shedding. There's a little salt, little water are coming out of my eyes right now. That's what gets the applause. And of course, she set up that question to do that. Do you any regrets? No. Yeah, no regrets. It's so epic and based. It's so epic to not have any regrets about the things that you say to other people. Yeah. Woohoo! Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god. Okay. Just
And it is true that my general posture is I'm not, I personally just tend not to be spicy for the sake of being spicy, but I am from New Orleans and everyone likes a little Tabasco once in a while. No, I mean, I think that you calibrate an opinion. I mean, sometimes there's a time and place for everything. And I thought Justice Jackson had made an argument in strong terms that I thought warranted a response. And I thought that I set the calibration right. But I hasten to add, that's an argument about ideas. One thing Justice Scalia used to say that I love is, I attack ideas, I don't attack people. And if you can't keep the two separate, you don't belong on a multi-member court. So I have the deepest respect for Justice Jackson, and that was not an attack on Justice Jackson. We just disagreed about the principle. We just disagreed about this question of the scope of judicial power.
Scalia once memorably described a legal argument embraced by the court as pure applesauce, which I just thought was so delightful. What's a legal argument that you would describe as pure applesauce today?
evil. Look, there it is. It's the evil. That's the evil. Oh, wait, I was going to comment on something I forgot. What was it?
By the court as pure applesauce, which
we just disagreed about this question of the scope of judicial.
Oh, what was it? She's talking about the birthright citizenship. And that's where and like, I'm sorry. I don't mean to be an aesthetic wokey, but like, that's the case where she decides to go after the black justice. Like, come on. Really? Come on. Come on.
Judicial power.
Scalia once memorably described a legal argument embraced by the court as pure applesauce, which I just thought was so delightful. What's a legal argument that you would describe as pure applesauce today? You can choose more than one.
Well, I guess maybe it would just be safest to stick to Casa since you're just going
something else.
Oh, pure applesauce. I don't know, Barry, I'm going to get into trouble because if I can't choose something I've already written, I can't venture out into other arguments I have not yet publicly criticized. So I'm going to take a hard pass.
Okay, fine. All right, let's talk about some of the ways that you've ruffled feathers, or, put another way, the way that you've surprised people in the way that you've sided. So you sided with the liberal justices recently in a number of cases: the Texas razor wire dispute, the attempt to freeze foreign aid, the Alien Enemies Act, the deportation case, and there have been others. And this has, of course, made you a target of the MAGA right. They've called you an evil DEI hire. I'm not even going to name the person that described you that way. Mike Davis, this prominent Republican lawyer, said you were a rabbled law professor with your head up your ass. And I wanted to just give
It's like gives Barry Weiss the cred now. She's getting her cred with like the centrist cred. Look, I'm saying that you sided with liberals and that Republicans don't like you either.
you the opportunity to respond to that. This has been not the physical
Are you
position.
asking me for like 5 jalapeno responses?
Yes, yes. Like, what do you like?
You know,
The sad thing is that if Barry Weiss had a better political perspective, she might be somebody I'd be attracted to in a different life.
let's see. People have called me things on either side, and when we started the conversation, to be in this job, you have to not care. I mean, or you have to do your very best not to care, and you have to have a thick skin. So I don't have social media, and I found out about those things pretty far after the fact because my husband and my assistants essentially screen things that come up, and we have a need to know arrangement, and they just tell me things when I need to know. And he did not deem the DEI hire thing that I needed to know right when it came out.
You write in the book about clerking for Scalia, and you say, Justice Scalia rightly observed that the judge who always likes the results he reaches is a bad judge. Why do you think that, and I'm sure we could talk about, if you were a judge from a different position, I could ask it this way, but why do you think that a lot of people, or at least some people on the right, seem to expect the court to just deliver the results that they want? Like, what has failed civically in our country where this is the reaction to decisions they don't like?
I think everybody expects the court to deliver results that it likes.
Don't shit on the white. I can't shit on the white. No. Don't make me shit on the white, please.
And I think it's just a disconnect. And I say this in the book. I think there's a disconnect between what people want in a moment. People want results, but the court has to apply the law. And so people who are onlookers to the court or interested or have a stake in the outcome, of course, want the court to deliver an outcome. And that's not new. That's not just of this moment. That's something that critics of the court have said for a long time and in other eras. So, I think it's not just people on the right. I think it's Democrats. I think it's Republicans. I think it's everyone. Everyone wants what they want, and thinks that certain justices should deliver it, and are disappointed in results. But again, the court can't respond to that.
Given the fact that you are, let's just say, less. I don't want to say unpredictable. I don't know. Would you describe yourself as unpredictable on the bench?
I wouldn't want it. Unpredictable makes it sound like you're a rattled law professor.
With your head up your ass.
Right. No.
Right.
Not unpredictable. Just, no, I feel like I independent thinker. Let's say that. Independent.
Okay. Given your independence on the bench, there have been a flurry of stories in recent months calling you saying two things broadly. One, you're the most interesting justice on the bench. And two, that you are drifting left. And there was recently this big piece in the Times by Jodi Kantor sort of showing this very scientific looking chart proving as much. Are you the most interesting justice on the bench? And if not, who is? And are you drifting left?
All right, pass on the first question. On the second question,
you're recusing yourself.
I'm recusing myself from the first question. On the second question, I don't think in those categories, and I think it would be actually inconsistent with my job to think in those categories of left and right. I mean, I think that courts wear judges wear black robes because we are not partisan. We're not wearing red and blue robes. We don't sit on the bench on the left and on the right. It's not like Congress where everybody's on one side or another. You're sitting in order of seniority.
The black robes are just epic.
And I think thinking in those categories of left and right is just the wrong way to think about the law. So I don't think about the law that way.
Scalia said...
There we go. I knew they were going to...
Scalia said...
This fucking audience, dude. Look at it. She's so tickled by it. Oh, God. Oh God. Oh, we're doomed. We're doomed. I don't I don't want to think about right and left anymore. Let's just all be friends. Yeah. Oh, what's the thing they clap the most for? Oh, because she no regrets. No regrets, and let's just be friends.
Said that the press is never going to understand the law.
You seem to understand the law pretty well.
I mean, I studied hard for this.
What?
Scalia said that the press is never going to understand the law.
You seem to understand the law pretty well.
I mean, I studied hard for this.
You're such a good scholar.
But why do you think he said that? And do you agree with that generally?
That the press is never going to understand the law?
Yeah, why do you think he said that?
I think he said that because of what we were talking about a minute ago. Just the press, and this isn't a criticism of the press, because I think this is how Americans live, operates in the current moment, in the current news cycle, with a focus on what's happening now. But the court operates at a place that's rooted in history and has the longer view. And I'll give you an example of what I mean that kind of circles back to your questions about nationwide
Rooted in history.
injunctions and what's happened with respect to President Trump's executive orders. The court has to take these cases and think about them in terms of the presidency, not President Trump. And I think the media, and I think all Americans watching it, watching these cases unfold, is thinking about it in the context of the current occupant of the office.
I almost thought they were going to clap for that. And it was like such a clappable line. Presidency, clap.
One thing that the court has to do for these cases and for all is imagine that it was President Biden, President Bush, president yet to be 50 years from now, because the answer has to be the same. But I think when you are in a business that is operating within a news cycle, and you're thinking about outcomes, and you're thinking about the way that things work in other branches of government where it's all decided by politics, you assume that the court is operating in that same time frame and with those same political considerations. So one reason that I wrote the book was to show how the court operates and that it is not that way.
After Trump took office, there were a lot of scholars that said we were in a constitutional crisis. And they basically said that because he was issuing a series of executive orders that these scholars said were unconstitutional, the birthright citizenship EO being one of those things. I'm not going to ask you to weigh in on them, but the broad principle is that courts move slowly. That's one reason for these injunctions that we've been talking about. And these executive orders move extremely fast. And that creates a window, in theory at least, where a president can act unchecked before the courts respond, and then the damage may already be done. Does that worry you? Is that something you're thinking about?
So the dilemma of these cases, and Justice Kavanaugh has written about this in some of his separate opinions, the dilemma of these emergency docket cases is that it can cut two ways. One is the way that you say, if the order is illegal in some way or unconstitutional, and it is allowed to maintain and stay in effect, then it will cause damage in the interim. If the order is lawful and the court allows an injunction to stay in place because the pace of litigation is slow, it could wind up that an administration's policy is stayed for the bulk of the president's term because litigation moves so slowly. So a president might actually be on his way out of office by the time the case was brought to the conclusion of litigation. So I think it's hard, and I think your view is going to turn in these cases a lot on whether you think the executive order was legal or illegal. Before any stay is granted, one of the key questions that the court has to answer is whether, let's imagine that it's the government asking the court for relief, whether the government is likely to succeed on the merits of its argument. So the court never stays one of the injunctions without considering whether the government is more likely than not to win at the end of the day. And if the court thought that the government was more likely than not to lose at the end of the day, it would leave the injunction in place, which which addresses some of the question of what happens if an illegal order is in place.
Let me maybe ask it in a more simple way. How will we know if we're in a constitutional crisis?
Before she answers that, like, so she's basically saying for everything where they let it stay, they did have the merits in mind. And she's kind of admitting that, right? She's saying that we do kind of have to think about, like, do we think the government's going to have a convincing argument, or but like, but also we don't know that that's actually what they're thinking. They're just thinking, do do we just let this go and just time it out, so hopefully we don't even have to really comment on it? Like, we can't mind read.
As American citizens? Like, what would that look like? Because honestly, if you're just a busy person going about your day and you see a lot of headlines that we're in a constitutional crisis, it's like, okay, how will we know that? What would that look like?
Well, look, I think the Constitution is alive and well. And I think that I don't know what a constitutional crisis would look like. I don't think that we are currently in a constitutional crisis, however. I mean, I think that our country remains committed to the rule of law. I think we have functioning courts. I think a constitutional crisis, we would clearly be in one if the rule of law crumbled, but that is not the place where we are. And it is true that, I mean, it's plainly true that right now we're in a time of passionate disagreement in America, but we have been in times of passionate disagreement before. I mean, if you just look at the 20th century and you think about campus unrest during the Vietnam War, and you think about the Great Depression, and then if you go back a little farther and you think about the Civil War, you think about the 50s and you think about the Civil Rights Movement. I mean, we've had times in this country where we have been bitterly divided and we have come out stronger for it. And I think that one of the themes that I try to hit in the book is that we need to learn to compromise and talk to one another and move forward past our disagreement to see one another as people and as fellow Americans and citizens. And that is the way to avert a constitutional crisis.
Oh God, the
In
wide
March,
shot.
Laura Ingraham asked the president if he would defy a court order going forward. And this is what he said. No, you can't do that. However, we have bad judges. We have very bad judges. And these are judges that shouldn't be allowed. I think that's a tautology. I think at a certain point, you have to start looking at what do you do when you have a rogue judge? Has the president ever spoken like that about the judicial system in this country? Has a president, an American president?
Let's see. So conflicts between the president and the judiciary are not new. They existed between Andrew Jackson and the Supreme Court. You know, even Abraham.
Can we just get the history lesson pivot?
Lincoln, you know, there was some conflict. There was conflict between FDR and the Supreme Court. So I think that.
Yeah, by the way, FDR wanted to do a lot of crazy shit that he did. And he kind of used it. He was just like kind of the liberal version, but he like pushed a lot of shit through the executive orders, and he like confiscated everybody's gold. He said, we're just going to change the whole fucking system overnight. Yeah. So the courts were like, sir, Mr. President, slow the hell down.
You know, when we talk about the separation of powers and the balance of power and there being a tug and a pull between the branches of government, this is, you know, a dance that we've seen before.
One of the great themes, I think, of the past decade, but maybe longer when historians look back on it, is the crisis of institutional trust and authority, whether it's public health or our universities or our schools, or like this is one of the great themes, right? And how does the court stay above that, right? It sometimes feels, and maybe people disagree about this, some people feel the court's been lost too. But from my perspective, the court feels like one of the last remaining places that feels somehow not above the fray, but as above it as is possible right now. How do you think, A, it maintains that, and B, And I'm asking you this, and I know this is impossible because you sit on the Supreme Court, but just as an American, how do you think about that crisis of institutional trust and authority, and what institutions that have lost it or have broken it in some way, what can they do to bring it back? And what lessons, I guess, can the court offer the other institutions?
Yeah, I worry about the lack of institutional trust too. And I hope, one hope of mine from the book is that I would like Americans to trust the institution of the court, because I do think it is a branch of government and a place and an institution that does operate with integrity and does, I'm not saying that the court always gets it right. Certainly, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that I always get it right. And I don't think that the court is above criticism or that I am above criticism, anything like that. But I do think Americans should trust that the court is trying to get it right. And I do think that Americans should trust that the court is doing its best to stay above the fray, as you put it, Barry. I don't have a recipe for how we restore institutional trust generally. And I know that some would say that they've lost trust in the court. I also think people lose trust in things they don't understand or that they don't know about, which is why I wanted to describe how decisions are made, and I wanted to describe how the court works so that people could see that and understand it. But I guess I think institutional trust fundamentally begins with trusting the people in the institutions.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that institutional trust grows from the trust that members of institutions have in one another. And I think it's when those who are within institutions mistrust one another and tear one another down that the foundation starts to crack.
One of the things that you write about in your book is choosing truth over status. Choosing truth over status. You write that it requires strength of character, and achieving it requires mastering the natural impulse to be a people pleaser. You talk about how your oath specifically demands a willingness to be unpopular. Does that resolve come from your Catholicism, your faith? What well do you draw from? Because being hated is not a natural thing. People want to be liked. I think one of the great, it sounds so childish to say, but I think one thing that I feel has changed in my understanding of human nature really over the past 5 or 10 years is how powerful the siren song of sort of being invited to the right parties and being in that warm bath of people that like you, how powerful that is, and how that's almost one of the most natural things that we want as people. So how do you overcome that?
For me personally, yeah, I do think that
You're
faith
rambling questions.
is a big part of it, because I think everyone does want to be liked, and you're right, like the warm bath of popularity and, kind of being where the cool kids are, like you were at the cafeteria table in middle school, is something that stays with you even as an adult, right? But I think if you fundamentally don't have your identity or consider your popularity or your status as the most important thing, if that's not where you locate your sense of self and you identify, my values lie in other things, right? If I had to walk away from the job, I would not feel like I had lost my sense of self, or if everyone hated me. I do feel like my Catholicism and my sense of faith would be what would enable me to take it. And I'm very fortunate. I have a wonderful family. We have good friends. My husband's so supportive, screening all of my need to know mail. So he's a buffer. But yeah, I do think, and I think in the last 5 to 10 years that you're talking about, you've gone through your own lessons in that regard. And I do think it's hard. I do think it's hard.
One of the things I think that's also just changed.
She wanted to say journey or growth or something like that. Oh, God.
Changed so much since I was a kid is just and we've lived through periods of intense political violence in American life. You read a book like Brian Burr's book, Days of Rage, about the 60s and 70s, and you're like, there's like a bomb every other day. It's crazy. Now, though, it feels like political violence is really heating up. And of course, people think about Luigi Mangione, but also, an armed man showed up at Justice Kavanaugh's house with plans to assassinate him. You've spoken about your son at one point asking why you were wearing or had a bulletproof vest. Your family's been threatened. A January 6th rioter said he wanted someone to slit your throat from ear to ear. What can people that
Okay, we brought up one instance of mega violence. Good job. Also, why didn't we bring up the very recent Minnesota shit that happened? That shit was insane. Insane. Wasn't one Minnesota lawmaker was actually killed by a MAGA guy.
love this country and are very concerned about the temperature being so hot, what can citizens do to try and bring it down, if anything?
Let's see. I think modeling disagreement and seeking out friendships with people who disagree with you. I mean, honestly, I think one of the, and I mean, I'm no sociologist, so I don't know all of the sources of this. I mean, I think social media plays a big part. I think COVID, one of the consequences of COVID is that it helps people get even more siloed. And so it's more unusual. Like, people think it's remarkable when you have friends who disagree with you politically, or
COVID messed us up. Yes.
Even if they share your politics, have deep disagreements with you about other things, or people of faith and then people of no faith. And that's just not how America has traditionally operated, I don't think. Disagreements have been present forever, but I just don't think that kind of silo effect is healthy. And
religion is cringe. I hate religion.
I think that in our current moment, and I'm not comparing it to what's happened in the past, but in our current moment, I don't know, change starts small, and you can't stop the way other people, all you can control is yourself, right? You can't stop threats made by other people or the way that other people are acting, but you can model agreeing to disagree in your own relationships. And then I think that spreads.
One thing we haven't really talked about tonight is we've talked about one group of 9. We haven't really talked about the other group of 9, which is your family. When I think about 7 kids, like we have 2 and we have a startup and it feels like it's impossible. And then I think about your life and you have 7. Make the rest of us feel better. What's the nanny situation like in your home? How are you balancing all of this?
Well, ours are older than yours, Barry. My oldest daughter is 24 and she's with us tonight. It's not like you have...
Yeah, it's the daughters.
We don't have 7 3-year-olds. and that
But
helps.
I feel like you could maybe do that too. Like what?
I think my grandmother of the picture, maybe she could. I definitely can't. When the kids were littler, we had a fabulous childcare situation because my husband's aunt was our nanny and she just loved the kids, and it was like having, another grandmother in the house. Now they're older and they're all in school. We have an after-school babysitter, and it's a team effort. And right now Jesse is doing more than his fair share of the teamwork. So yeah, I mean, it is a lot of balls to juggle, but I will say that I find that work always expands to the amount of time allotted for it. And so if you force yourself to work, I mean, I'm home for family dinner every night, with some rare exception. And if you just tell yourself, I've got to walk out the door, then you manage to get everything else in the time that you have.
Do you go back to work after dinner?
I do not go back to the
Not physically.
Not physically. I will often do some more work at home, but I'm getting old, Barry. It's hard to stay up that late.
Salary.
You mentioned your youngest
Damn,
son,
paying this lady a
Benjamin,
lot of money.
has Downs. You learned about his diagnosis after you were born. And in an old interview, you tell a story where you're on the phone with your mom and you say, "Our life is like a high-speed train, and I really needed a baby who could hop on board." Tell people what your mom said.
She said, "Then I think the Lord's telling you to slow your train down." But that didn't really happen.
Amy Coney Barrett, this is a lightning round. And
okay.
Try not to recuse yourself. I know it's going to be tempting. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
One word for the following people: John Roberts.
Chief.
Cla- Clarence Thomas.
Laugh.
Samuel Alito.
Grandfather.
Sonia Sotomayor.
Lively.
Elena Kagan.
Analytical.
Neil Gorsuch.
Oh, interesting.
Out west.
Brett Kavanaugh.
Sports.
Ketanji Brown Jackson.
Actor. Broadway. Yeah, that's what I meant.
RBG, just for fun.
Collar.
Nice. Scalia.
Opera.
Favorite justice from history? American history, that is.
Yeah, so this is the conventional answer, but I'm going to say it anyway. Chief Justice John Marshall. He was an institution builder.
Favorite president in American history?
Yeah.
Oh, why not be conventional twice? George Washington.
Really? I thought you were going to go Lincoln.
Yeah.
Most important founder in your view?
Oh,
interesting.
probably Madison.
Who was the best pope?
Yeah.
And you're not allowed to say John Paul II because everyone does.
Oh, but that's my answer. He was my formative.
Okay,
years.
you could go with him if you want.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm a conventional girl here.
Who was your confirmation saint?
Saint Therese of Lisieux.
Why?
I just loved her. I love her story. She was a saint just in doing the little everyday things. We named one of our daughters after her.
Have you seen The Handmaid's Tale?
No. And I've never purchased said costume, but I did have many Handmaid's Tale costumes sent to me after I was converted.
Enough that your whole family could have a common Halloween costume?
I did not keep them very.
We talked a lot about Scalia tonight. He called his clerks the clerkerati, which I think is so cute. What's the greatest lesson you ever learned from him?
Oh, gosh. So many, but I guess I will single out this one. He was very devoted to faith and family as well, while accomplishing an incredible amount, just being just an astoundingly good justice and astoundingly good writer. But he never lost sight of those values. And I'll end my tribute to Scalia with the story that I relate in the book, which someone wrote about after he died. He was in a church and no one else was around, and he remained in the pew. And there was another person in the church who looked, as this author described it, like the kind of a person you avoid in the street. Sounded like a homeless and mentally ill person, and came up to Justice Scalia. And he sat there and he listened to the person, reached out to the person, didn't turn away or avoid the person, pressed money in hands, gave a hug, and left. Didn't know anybody that had seen him, but this person was in the church. And to do what Justice Scalia did and accomplished in life, but still be able to have moments like that and to still see humanity, I think is really special. That's the
You
kind of
reached out to
person
a
I want
homeless
to be.
person.
I had other questions, but that's the perfect closer. Thank you. 1 second.
Yeah.
This is. I got to plug the book one more time. It's Amy Coney Barrett is the author of this book. It's called Listening to the Law. And crucially, the bar in the lobby is going to be open for the next hour. So please go have a gin and tonic, enjoy yourself. The best part of any free press event is meeting other subscribers. Thank you all so much for coming. And thank you one more time,
Thank you, Barrett. Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody.
Oh, God. Oh, God. All right. I'm watching the Epstein video, then I'm out. I have nothing else to say about that. I feel worse after watching that interview for sure, though.
Major developments in Trump's growing Epstein scandal. Lawyers for the Epstein estate submitted the convicted sex offender's so-called birthday book to members of the House Oversight Committee. Those documents were released by the committee just minutes ago. This afternoon, Democrats on the panel have posted what appears to be Trump's lewd birthday letter to Epstein, originally reported by the Wall Street Journal this July.
Signature.
It has not been obtained by NBC News.
That is definitely Donald Trump's signature. 100%. 100%. I've seen that signature so many times. I remember seeing that signature when I got my stimulus check. That's this dude's signature, for sure.
Letter features an imagined conversation between Trump and Epstein in which Trump tells him, "May every day be another wonderful secret." Before the letter's publication, Trump insisted it never existed, even sued the Wall Street Journal for billions of dollars. And yet, the White House is doubling down, with Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt insisting Trump neither drew.
Oh, what's the response? The latest piece published by the proves this entire birthday story is false. Frankly, did not draw this picture and he did not sign it. The guilty will continue to aggressively pursue litigation. At the exact same minute he published his story, giving us no time to respond. God, she's so slimy, dude. So they're just gonna, it's just fake. It's fake. It's fake. It's fake. Right. Direct from the Epstein estate. It's fake. It's a hoax.
Nor signed the picture, adding that Trump would still pursue his defamation suit against the Wall Street Journal.
Oh boy.
But this letter, it is just one part of a bigger picture. Donald Trump's Epstein woes, they are not going away. Joining us now, former president of NARAL, Elise Hogue, and former campaign manager for Joe Walsh 2020, Lucy Caldwell.
Welcome to you both. So Lucy, Elise, welcome again. This is,
Walsh.
Alicia laid out in the opening, how the White House and Trump claim, oh, this never existed. This is never. And here we have the evidence. And they're now saying, oh, this is all made up. It's a Democratic hoax. But what it says to me, aside from what, Caroline Leavitt has to say standing in front of the podium, we know she's shilling for Trump and she will lie for him. But we see this with our own eyes. We know by now Donald Trump's signature. Not too many people can forge that signature. And you mean to tell me people were forging that signature back in the day for Donald Trump? I mean, so all the credibility around this that they're trying to strip away isn't working. The question for me is, and I'm wondering if it's the same for you, is how much this affirms the nature of the relationship between Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein. Because I know if I'm sending someone something like that, they are bro. We run hard together. We got jokes. We got inside jokes. We know things about each other that we don't talk about in loud spaces. That's what that drawing says to me, that there's a relationship here that Donald Trump.
It's a little awkward. You can feel the energy there. I get his point, but that was like a weird way to say it.
Trump just does not want the curtain peeled back on. And looks like we may get a peek behind the curtain.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And actually, just last week, there was an op-ed in The Guardian by Stacey Williams, a person that I got to know last cycle, who is a former Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue, former supermodel, Hall of Famer, who last year underwent a polygraph. And she said,
he's working on the assumption that we don't know yet that Trump did anything nefarious or bad with kids or whatever. Like, I get it. Yeah, I get what he was trying to say.
Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein were best friends. She dated Jeffrey Epstein, and she accused Donald Trump of having been highly inappropriate with her in front of Jeffrey Epstein. There are many, many women with stories like this. And when you look at the specter of this and you see the way that Donald Trump is acting now relative to how he acted on the campaign trail, he's behaving a lot like someone who has something to hide. And I think that this issue is different than other issues for Donald Trump, because I spend a lot of time looking at the ways in which Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans have radicalized their base. And I tell you, it doesn't matter whether you're an aging Tea Partier or a young...
I was seeing the MAGA Republicans because she was on Joe Walsh's campaign. So she's going to make a distinction there. They're the crazy ones. I don't claim them. Yeah, whatever.
Conservative or a person who's a Christian conservative. all of these factions within MAGA report that these issues, this sort of swirl around Epstein, whether it's concerns or sex trafficking, whatever, they are highly motivated by this issue. So he has absolutely overplayed his hand. And we're seeing with things like Stacey Williams' op-ed, and then now today, this revelation of this really disgusting card, which I wish we could all unsee. There's a there.
I mean, so look, I'm as happy as the next person to sit here and be like, this is fun, right? Like, finally, we get to salivate over some bad news for them. It is actually causing some problems. We should be happy that they are back on their heels. One of the best things about this is they can't get their story straight. Is he an FBI informant? Is he not an FBI informant? Mike Johnson, can you land on a square? And I want to go back to what Lucy is saying, because I think it's really important for Democrats. These are not necessarily people that are coming over to our side.
Just like imagine you finally making into the history books, but you're Mike Johnson, though. His like weird elfish little face is gonna be like, Mike, and the kids at that time are gonna read it and be like, who is this dude? This was our history? Who the fuck is that? They're probably gonna look at Trump and be like, what the hell? We elected a pumpkin.
No matter how mad they are at Donald Trump. You know, I think Peter Thiel is pretty happy about this, right? Like, he is looking at J.D. Vance up and coming, untainted by this scandal.
Whereas, do you think he's untainted, though? Because now he has carried water on this.
Oh, what? Oh, okay. Well, that's a good counter analysis, because I was saying the same thing. I'm like, you know what? Is it much better if this gets rid of Trump than we just have Vance? But that's true. Vance has kind of probably been involved now, where he's probably run cover for it. So I don't know what MAGA would do. Would they just want a complete change of leadership? That's true. This could get a little crazier than I thought, I guess. Just from a gorgeous, glamorous, brilliant counterexample reporter here.
He's carried a little bit of water, but I don't know that people are paying that much attention. When you get down to 2028, who is going to be pissed off enough? Can I say that over here? Who is going to be pissed off enough about this to peel it away from J.D. Vance if your choice is a Democrat and you come from one of these factions?
I just want to say before I kick it over to you, Simone, that we are learning as we come on air that breaking just now, the House Oversight Committee has released all of the documents that are in their possession. And it brings me to the question of if the value of this book is actually in the book itself, or in the fact that it makes it much harder for Republicans to look away.
Yeah, I think the book is just one of the many things that, first of all, is in the possession of the Epstein estate, one of the many copies, if you will, that are contained in what is known as the Epstein files, right? The files, we talk about them as though like it's something that fits in one little folder or on a flash drive, but it's actually thousands and thousands and thousands of pages of documents. There are pictures, there's video from the government got when they searched Epstein's homes. The files are many things. So this is just one piece. And I think it is it is, yes, what's in the files, but also what will this quest for oversight really reveal? And the conspiracy theories are running rampant, frankly. And to be clear, the conspiracy is not what Jeffrey Epstein did, because he did it. The victims are real. The survivors are real. His crimes are real. Ghislaine Maxwell's crimes are real. But the conspiracy is all the conversation around it, outside of that. But there have been investigations in the past. I'm thinking about Watergate, right? Or you even go to the 9/11 Commission. And there have been all these attempts at transparency, aggressive oversight. And Watergate is an example where the aggressive oversight yielded us, some lasting changes until, Donald Trump. And we'll get into that later in the show. But the 9/11 Commission, lots of time and money. And
I agree with the Watergate analysis, though. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's why this is good, because this could reveal something that could be enough to, I mean, again, and I think that's what would happen. I think what would happen is like Trump would never want the undignity of actually being like impeached and removed. So if something came out where like he has his core team of people that would be like, bro, this is too much. You need to resign. And then Trump would do it, and he would make a whole thing out of it, and like he would make it epic and cool, and MAGA would defend it. And that's probably what's gonna happen. Clip it. That's my prediction.
Energy was spent on getting the truth out there to the American people. And to this day,
like
there's still conspiracy theories that run rampant on the left and the right about what happened on 9/11.
Like,
and so I wonder, will the daylight here be enough to kind of push the conspiracy theorists to the fringe, or will it just continue to fuel the fires? And what about the survivors? I think there's a lot of audiences here. There's Democrats, there's Democratic elected officials, there's Republican elected officials, there's Republican voters, there's the survivors of Ghislaine Maxwell and Epstein's abuse. And I think they all want different things.
He's gonna be like, the Democrats are possessing everyone's minds, so I have to step down for the good of the country. MAGA will believe him.
And while we're talking about survivors, can we have a moment for E. Jean Carroll's win in court today that was upheld, her own case against Donald Trump? It's a very important story.
Very much so. I agree.
So I'm going to piggyback onto Simone's point, because I think all of these pieces come together in a very nice way in terms of narrative. One thing I've learned in my short number of years in politics is narrative and how you tell the story. And for me, to your point, Simone, it's less about those other things relative to Watergate and the Church Commission and all these other moments in our history that weren't about the thing that's central here. Mm-hmm. And that is the relationship. That's why I started there, because that's the one thing Donald Trump can't unsee, can't undo, can't uncontrol or take control of, is because there's so much evidence out there about the relationship.
Well, close. It was almost really good analysis. It's because there's a long-standing record of the relationship. That's the key. That's the key. The record of the relationship is still is very much there. And Trump hates records. He hates records. Trump would love to just go and burn libraries and burn down universities and burn like centers of knowledge and like take us back to the Stone Age, just so that he could just use his charm and manipulation to completely take over everyone, because there'd be no evidence of anything that he's ever done. It's like wipe. Whoosh. He didn't give, like, if it would help him win, he wouldn't give a fuck. Burn it all down.
And so, narratively speaking, talking up to your point about 2028 and J.D. Vance, yes, Peter Thiel and company may try to do the backstroke for him, but the more he is forced to go out and stand next to his president and defend him, that relationship becomes a part of his story too, because you defended a guy who was friends with a pedophile. Now, try that in a sentence and see how it works.
Well, you said it right
when you're running for office. And so I think that you defended a guy who was friends with a pedophile.
Damn.
Now, try that in a sentence and see how it works when you're running for office. And so I think that there's a lot more here to unpack, depending on how the stories play themselves out. But to me, that's what's so important about this moment, this pictorial of this relationship, is the relationship.
Cool. Good one, everybody. All right. I'm so tired. Goodbye.